this series of videos, I want to be very meticulous. So I hope you'll be patient with me, and as I go along, you'll find this interesting. Thanks again. All right, I want to get started on this next major part of this, which is folding the wings. So again, Glenn, working with Glenn Hoover's instructions, first thing he talks about is separating the wings from the wing roots, and suggests that you cut up from above to stay accurate, rather than going from below while it's made to be cut. It looks like, oh, I'll just cut from there, but he suggests no, you'll get off track if you don't go from above. So then comes the actual folding part. So the kit doesn't provide any instructions, right? It just comes with the parts. He took the kit pictures, and basically he just says dry fit and glue. But when I look at this, there's this piece apparently on here that needs to be cut out. You can see how this is notched out here, and it looks like notched out on both pieces. So like from the back here back, it's this part that's exposed. You can see how it is here. So I guess I can tell from this photo, but nowhere are there instructions or what. So I'm going to document that as I go through this. The first step is to cut these along these lines here, again from the top, and I'm just debating on what tool to use. So test some of these out. So I gave each of those tools a try and then settled on the razor saw, and then used some sticky tack underneath to hold it in place. Cut that first one off, and then followed the same procedure on the other one. Next is now cutting these pieces off their resin bases. And again, I think I'm going to go with the razor saw. I think as long as I stay far enough back this way, I shouldn't interrupt anything here. Again, I might use some sticky tack here to help me out. And then I follow the same procedure on those upper wings with my razor saw. It looks like what they suggest is cutting back this portion of the wing here on the flap and allowing this to take that, and then somehow I guess you patch it out here. If you look, that is perfectly aligned. So somehow this would have to fit inside that hole. So it's a combination of making that hole bigger and narrowing this down. I'm thinking of cutting this back even further and then sanding kind of down on an angle to fit that inside there, and then just carving the inside of this down. So you would think Black Dog would have like, PDFs or instructions on the way to go. But if you look at their instructions, you can see they have it fit inside here, but they don't have the edges don't meet. Nothing's closed up. So they never kind of show the finished product. It's going to take a little more playing around with than I had hoped. But oh well, that's modeling. So the other thing that has to happen is these ridges, those need to come off. So I'm going to do that next, because I believe there will be some rescribing and stuff that'll need to take place below there. So I just clipped those off, then taped around them, and then sanded them down. So I carved this back and carved the inside of this. So now those two meet up like that. I think I have this. So again, I opened it up on the inside there, trimmed it down all the way around on the inside, leaving that ridge, so to speak. And now when I put it in there, I think I've got a pretty good fit. Now I will try to get the other three to the same stage, then finish all the scribing and everything, and then put those together as the last step. All right, here's the one at the root. One side done, I'll do the other side. So here I just show how I marked the flaps back there, and then proceed to cut them out with my razor saw. And then once I got those openings, it was a matter of paring them down, test fitting, paring down, test fitting. All right, just fit this last one here. And yeah, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to turn my attention to getting all the scribing correct, filling in these holes and putting in that resin piece and correcting the wing here. And then this area in here is going to require a lot of work because it's really completely different. This has to move back. I think these two pieces, raised pieces need to come off. So just completely redoing that. I have the wings from that other kit to use as references. Some of the things on here got a little obliterated, so I have these to refer to just in case. And I am going to remove this piece because there's two on the trader. I'm going to take this off very carefully and use that in addition to this one. So then I remove that surface detail, which I'll replace later, and then cut off this antenna. Got it. All right, not too bad at all. Okay, before I cut this next one, I had to cover that drain. I have lost parts down that drain before. That first one landed right there. So there we go. I think I got rid of any trace of it. And you'll note those horizontal indentations on the flaps there. So I addressed those as well as the holes in the wings, first with this medium super glue. And then once that dried, I came back and overcoat those sections with the ultra fine super glue to later then be able to buff it down. Got those rear flaps filled in now and smooth. And yeah, you can see the shadow of the super glue there. And there's those two holes are now filled in. So I finally got to scribing the wings and using those extra ones as a guide, as well as then comparing them to each other, making sure they're consistent, especially the bottom of the wings, which will be exposed. I think I've got these scribed to the point where I'm happy with them. So I re-scribed a lot of the raised and then added what was, deleted by removing those pylons. Just FYI, I went ahead and fitted those tail wings, and they're just in there with sticky tack, which means they're too loose to stay by themselves, but to me that's kind of a good thing, so I'll be able to fit those when the time comes. Okay, so now I've glued all these together, and I'm going to fit this resin piece on here to fill that the void left by that apparatus. Before I glue these in, I want to test the ultra thin glue bonding resin to the plastic. Yeah, that's what's happening. That's melting to this, but this is not melting to that, and I want a strong bond. So I may have to use the ultra thin super glue and let capillary action do its thing on that. Here are the first two that I fit. So there's one. So I'm going to have to again fill in that flap area. And there's the other. So toward the front there, I filled that in with the thicker super glue. I'll have to smooth that down. And then again, the flap area. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy with that fit. I've got the other two waiting till I fix that. All right, these flaps are just testing me. So to get that straight across there, I had to make that little wedge piece out of here. Same thing over here. If you can see it, there's a little wedge right in there to add to that. So once that glue dries, then I gotta smooth that out. But getting these flaps, and you can see I'm waiting for that gap filling super glue to dry. Getting these flaps to line up and look natural is not easy. And this is the furthest I'm along on any of them. Very challenging. And then those tips there. So while working on these wing folds and waiting for those flap repairs to dry, I also want to get started on the engines, and the next step in Glenn's instructions are to paint those sub pieces. So I'm going to start with the steel on the engines. I shot those with steel, and now you'll remember I wanted to do the those lines on there. So I took some black and I was touching them into the black and letting those dry. And then I actually painted the string and then started cutting it into sections. So now I'm going to place those on there. After test fitting these, the ones that I painted, they're not quite long enough. I want them to go a little bit I want them to go all the way from the center post out to the lay on top of this. So this time I'm going to try this, doing them with the Sharpie, black Sharpie. I think this is working. Kind of just pull it through there a few times and get it black, and then cut those to size. Yeah, that seems to be working. And the marker on there is very consistent, whereas the paint, you know, even at that scale, is kind of gummied up here and there. So yeah, I think this is gonna work. I love finding something new. All right, there we go. Hopefully you can see those on there. That's one down, one to go. So there it is, actually inside the cowling. Gives it a little more visual interest, I guess. And then lastly with the propeller. And there we go. So both of those are done now. And I'll go in and paint the dark ghost gray on the backgrounds. Pretty happy with the way that came out. You'll see here that there's this rest, and on this one on the top here, it has this rectangle right there. I'm going to build those rests because there's no way this is going to hold that wing. So I'm going to scratch build those rests when I scratch build the rest of this stuff up there. All right, so I think that's it for this video. I'm still patching these flap areas on each of these. I have the wings done and scribed. I'll have to go back and touch some things up, and I'm closing in on getting these filled. But basically, you know, what this is going to look like when it's done is, you know, something like right about there with this in between, right about there. Way more work than I expected it to be. And then those engines, again, I'm super happy with the way those came out. This is what I got done on my Christmas vacation. It was way more work than I expected. Took way longer than I expected. So between the wing folds and those engines, that's what I got done this time. I think this is a good stopping point. So as always, thanks for watching and happy modeling.